By the way, everybody in this game has colored
talking.
hair. Like, only if you're... Like, you can know who's going to be on your team or an important character because they have colorful hair and big eyes. Then all the normies in the villages, they have small eyes and just, like, brown hair.
Yeah. Anime chess.
Yes, anime chess. Welcome to New Game Plus. This is a retro gaming podcast where three guys spend 7 days playing one old game and then we talk about it. My name is Dustin.
My name is Kenny.
Nolan.
And this is episode 375.
That's a lot of episodes.
Recent study from Fandom has come out saying that millennials spend more time gaming than younger generations. In fact, 40% of millennials spend around 22 hours a week gaming compared to 29% of teenagers today.
It's because of the outliers that are the people that listen to our episode, and they all spend 80 hours a week playing games and skew the stats.
That's an interesting stat that I totally buy. Like, because
No, for sure.
I don't know
I love it.
what younger I do too. I think that's good. I don't know what younger generations spend their time doing. More
TikTok?
I'd be interested. Well, no, not just that. Like, yes, maybe
that's a
more
lot of it.
more phone screen time maybe, but not totally. And so that's a whole different study. We don't have that information, but yeah, like we have WoW. Like millennials, dude, got marketed with WoW, with Halo, with every. I mean, we just grew up in a weird time.
Yeah, prime gaming generation. We grew up with the evolution of games,
Right?
And
And that's it. I don't think it's just WoW and some of these other. It's that like games were evolving as we were growing and aging, and honestly, within this last generation, gaming, although it has evolved some, has kind of already reached a zenith. Of course, it's going to go to a new level at some points, but like it hasn't done too much evolving within the last decade or so.
And that might be why some of non-millennials aren't really biting, because, I mean, if y'all know my opinion, I think modern gaming is just trash. It's all the same game. It's not interesting. Like, and so
Sound
maybe
like
that
a millennial.
I do sound like a bit of a millennial, but it's true. Like, so maybe that's part of it too.
Gaming has always been a vehicle, not just, but often a vehicle for socialization too.
Okay.
I remember, we talk about the couch co-op vibe of like old games all the time. I remember growing up playing multiplayer games and then talking about them with friends at school. That's huge. And the place that socialization has moved. Like, we grew up with games, but we also grew up with PCs and with the internet and technology, and that's where these connections were happening. And so I think a lot of it is bigger even than just gaming. It's how do we connect to each other?
It's interesting that you bring that up, because that study also found that teens today generally play games to build social connections, while older generations play to relax.
Yeah. Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense, actually.
We generally, is what it's finding, play to disconnect, to relax, to chill, while they're doing it socially. In fact, the games that they find millennials playing more often are like MMOs, which 41% of millennial respondents played, strategy games at 27%, RPGs at 26%, while teens and preteens preferred competitive genres like battle royales.
Yeah. This is true. This makes total sense to me. Because they had to also. A lot of them during lockdown, that's how you socialized. And so that's now...
that plays into it.
Like, just do it at home. You don't have to leave your house. That's how you do it.
Definitely plays into it. And listen, we are different generations, millennials and Gen Z and whatever the next one is. But we're all gamers. Like, there's no gatekeeping here. No. There's nothing that can come in between us. Like in our retro game of the week, Fire Emblem, The Sacred Stones.
Overview.
FETSS was developed by Intelligent Systems and published by Nintendo for the GBA, the Game Boy Advance, in the year 2004. It is the 8th entry in the Fire Emblem series, but only the 2nd to be released outside of Japan. What was the first?
Yeah. Fire Emblem 7, I don't know the Japanese title for
So the
it.
one
It
right
did not
before.
have a right before on GBA, it didn't have a tagline. It was just Fire Emblem.
Oh, really? Was it on
Blazing
Super
Sword.
Nintendo?
No, it was on GBA.
I thought this was the first GBA.
No.
Oh.
FE7 was the first Game Boy.
This was the 3rd and final title to be developed for the Game Boy Advance after the Binding Blade and its prequel.
The
Fire
Binding
Emblem.
Blade. There you
Good.
No,
Good job with that reading.
yes, the Blazing Blade. But in America, it was just called Fire Emblem for the
Yeah.
GBA.
Yeah. And this series, Fire Emblem, began with, correct me if I'm wrong, Super Smash Bros. Melee.
Excuse me?
The series began with Super Smash Bros. Melee.
Of course not.
Well, yeah, because you have the guy and the girl and the other guy and the other girl and all the guys and all the girls that with swords. And
Melee only had Marth and Roy from Fire Emblem in them. And Marth's from the first game. And Roy
What
is from 6, FE6, which was on the GBA, not in the States, only in Japan.
Dustin, why you're confused is because the Smash Brothers games have so many characters,
Okay.
but it's
I'm
not
gonna kill
quite
both.
enough characters to make it a Fire Emblem game. So
I'm going to kill both of them.
Nice, Kenny. And don't threaten murder, please.
I will.
Okay, so
lawyer.
I stand corrected. The series did not begin with Super Smash Bros. Melee. It is a massive series, however, that is known for its vast cast of characters, as Kenny is referencing. It's a series known for its grid-based battlefields, and it's a series that's largely known for permadeath of characters.
It's often been called anime chess.
And called correctly. We'll have to ask questions of our resident chess professional here today. It's not it's Kenny.
Yeah.
Kenny, and because this is probably only his 2nd Fire Emblem game to play, because it is only our 2nd Fire Emblem game on the podcast. We did play Mystery of the Emblem
Mystery.
on episode 106
Nice.
many years ago.
Yes.
we've played other tactics games, RPG, but this is the only other Fire Emblem game we've played.
And Kenny is a big chess man. And
I played chess lately.
often
Not well
when
yet.
when we play the game, what are you playing right now? One of his answers is
simply
chess.
chess.
Yeah, because I'm boring, or I'm a fad follower. Like that might be it
Chess
Is
too.
chess
Fad
still
or-
big?
Oh, y'all are out of touch with Gen
I know the
Z.
lawsuit. I
Like,
know.
No, it blew up and it's still going strong like crazy.
That's
After
fine.
the cheater, I feel like it calmed down a little bit.
Yeah, we
In
need
like
a good
social
lawsuit.
media
Cheater?
space.
We need a good
No,
drama
like
story.
the youngins are still playing it like crazy.
That's great. Cool.
So you're trying to connect?
No, I just am bored. I need
love
a game.
that
Diablo 4 isn't out yet.
Papaw games are getting players. That's good.
Are becoming cool.
Yeah.
This has some chess similarities, but hold
no.
that lightly. I mean, it's tactical. It's a square-based battlefield. We'll talk more about it in gameplay. What chess doesn't have, however, Sacred Stones does, and that is
Waifus.
a story.
Yeah. Definitely that.
So this, and I believe most of the Fire Emblem games are big political dramas. And so this one, the Grotto Empire is launching an assault on the nation of Renee. Don't pronounce the S. It's clearly a nod to French.
Yes.
As one of the twin heirs to the throne of Renee, Erica flees her home with a small retinue of warriors to find and rescue her brother Ephraim and survive, if not win, the war.
Yes. All of them are political drama setups like that. Not always
Yeah.
a twin, but I love this series. If you can't tell, I played the first one we played on the podcast was the first time I had played that one, the old NES origins of this series. I'm more familiar with this GBA. I played this specific game over and over and over and over. I played the one before it even more than that, but this game is very special to me, and I'm excited to talk about it.
And you've played it before. Kenny has not played it before, and I have played it before. I asked Nolan many years ago what game I should play to get into the Fire Emblem series, and you suggested this one. It was separate from playing a game on the podcast, and it must have been before the Mystery of the Emblem. So this was
it? Yeah.
over 5 years ago.
It was so long ago, and I'm glad. That was so smart of me to tell you to play this one first, because I have in my notes, this is like where I would point a beginner, because it's such a good first Fire Emblem.
Right. So this week it was my return to the game and all of our return to the series.
Gameplay.
Kings, queens, rooks, knights, pawns, bishops. Did I get everybody?
Yep.
Kenny,
Nolan.
who's who?
What do you mean who's who?
No, let's get
Everybody's
this out of the way, because it's not
self-explanatory.
chess. It's a meme. Anime chess.
It is a meme. But I think
it's
for
a grid.
people that haven't stepped into the series, I think that is an adequate description to at least get their minds in the right frame of reference. I think it's fair.
Maybe.
There's some reasons it works. There's a plethora of reasons it doesn't work.
Oh, yeah.
But permadeath of your characters, like you die,
I
you're
wouldn't
off
even
the board.
include that one, but yes.
Oh, I would. I think that's one of the most.
Because it's not permadeath. You can bring back a queen in actual chess, but we'll talk about that later.
Oh,
Checkmate.
Various values, like there's some characters that are stronger than others and that you're going to care about,
Right.
and the fact that movement and fighting is different among your pieces, but like it falls apart after that. It's real more just it's memey.
Okay, it is Mimi. Yes, we're all on the same page. But I will say, okay, so each level, each stage that you're on is like a big chessboard, except you've got varying terrain, you've got villages, obstacles, different things, as well as unique enemies that you're facing. And you go through 2 different phases over and over again until the end: player phase and enemy phase. White side and black side. You kind of go just back and forth between the 2 different phases.
Okay.
And you're moving your units. Each of them can move in varying ways or varying distances. I'm not doing all the comparisons. I'm just trying to paint the picture for people that haven't played the game or the series before.
Yeah.
And you typically are using them to attack enemies. And there's a rock, paper, scissors kind of scenario where I don't know it exactly, but it's like
The weapon
swords
triangle.
beats spears and spears beats axes and axes beats swords. Okay. Nolan's shaking his
It's
head.
like
no.
that.
It's like that.
But yeah, that's
And so you're using your units to face off. And so that's exactly what it is over and over again for multiple chapters. There's tons of story in between, but you're going through these various phases, fighting the enemies with different winning conditions. I think that's always interesting in these games.
Yes. I mean, RTS versus TBS. Turn-based strategy is better, I think. I know Kenny loves RTS, but like this is totally turn-based strategy. You have as much time as you want when it's your turn to think about the map, to look at enemies, to examine their stats, to see how far they can move, predict where they're probably going, who they're probably going to attack, and whether or not you want to be in range of that. And so you have all this time to plan that out, and that's the core of the game. Is just it really is one of the better strategy games because it's so much strategy. There are some labeled as strategy games that end up being a lot more actiony and less so on focus on the actual like thought process of the rock paper scissors and like of strategic decisions. But this one really does feel like you are commanding a battalion, which a lot of the games are set up that way. Your character is like the strategist in FE7. They don't address it here. They just throw you into it. But it does feel that way. And that's what I've always loved about the games is the emphasis on the strategy part.
So much so that you can, like, you said plan out, but like I would often move a character to a location, get close to battling an enemy, and then realize that's not a good approach. And I could back out of that where my character would back up to their starting point.
Yep.
You know, as long as you haven't secured that option,
Committed,
you can committed to it. Like you can always back up. And there's stats, like it shows you everything. It shows you your percentage to hit, your percentage of hitting a crit, how much damage you're going to do. if you're going to strike twice or just once, like all of that. You have an option of using a variety of weapons that your character has in their inventory equipped on them, and like there's a lot of options, and it's not even all like combative. You can heal. Some of your units can heal other items. You can rescue. So like some can move a lot further and can rescue an enemy, or sorry, not an enemy, someone on your team. You can bring them onto your horse or whatever, and then you can move them more speedily across the battlefield, drop them off so that they're there in the fray. Yeah. Like there's a lot of tactical options here, and like you said, you can take it as slow as you'd like.
A ton of tactical options, and tactical options that matter. I feel like there's some of these types of games where, yeah, there's tactics, but the like rock, paper, scissors thing is really strong. Or like, yeah, there's tactics, but really it's an RPG, and you're just going to get one or two characters super buffed, and like that's it. And maybe we get more into that later as you kind of have characters that you use more and they level up. There may be some of that, but I found generally if I wasn't being careful and thoughtful about how to do these battles, it could go poorly and unexpectedly poorly. You had to be cautious, and especially for I refuse to lose anyone types of game players, which is me and me. And has a hard time with these. That means a lot of saving and redoing, sometimes long battles if you're not cautious and careful and know what you're doing. And especially on a first take at a game, I didn't always know what I was doing.
And see, that's how I would recommend a first-time player approach the game. If you want to play more challenging stuff, you can do what's called Iron Manning. And I know a lot of people like Garlisle and some other people in the community that are familiar with the series. Iron Manned this week, I did too, which means if a character dies, you don't reset, you continue. So, but if you do reset, or if your lord dies, which we will get into, which is your main...
That's game over.
That's game over.
Right.
So you must restart. You're able to take a different approach. And it might be a really unorthodox approach. You're like, I wouldn't have done this. Like, I wouldn't have thought to do this the first try, but maybe it works. And sometimes it does. Because the way that they have the levels designed, it's one of my favorite level design games. Like, they're just brilliant about how they have laid out the terrain, laid out different tiles. So not every tile is created equal. Some tiles will prevent a character from moving farther. So a forest, for instance, a tree tile will take a character that has a movement of 7 down to 6 because you're walking through trees, which makes sense. But if you stand on the tree tile, you get increased hit avoidance. And so there's so much decision making in the terrain itself that on a second approach, if you do reset, there's something else to try. It's not always one solution. And it also depends, what characters did you bring? Because you build your team and you've got plenty of options, as Kenny has already started complaining about.
Wow. This is not only options with who you bring on the battlefield with you, which you don't get until maybe like 4 or 5 chapters in, but you get to determine and decide how you want to upgrade your characters, which I thought was really cool. And I believe this is the first Fire Emblem game to allow branching class changes.
It be. This was
actually
actually
nuts.
This was really
it's a super cool mechanic. Yeah.
So, like, the series always had upgradable units they can upgrade, but this one had where, like, if you have a thief, for example, you can have the option of eventually upgrading them at level 10 to assassin or rogue. If you had a fighter, which is kind of your first class, or you can upgrade them to a warrior or a hero. Like, there are different your bow people, like a sniper, or like there's so many different options, branching options, and there's not always one right way. It's kind of whatever works with the team that you're building out. And
the depth is crazy.
Yeah.
You've got more options beyond that too, although that's sort of your primary way of specializing a unit, but you also get some choices on specialization based on which weapons you level up, because the weapon system in this game has some complexity too. With weapons that don't last, which I know is Dustin's favorite thing in the whole world, and two with mastery. Like you can get one of your weapons like leveled up all the way to the highest tier, but that means any of the other weapons that you work on aren't going to be able to get to that tier. So you've got a little bit of choice around kind of play style there too. And so a diverse set of characters and then diversity within those characters on how you sort of spec them. And so lots of choices. You're going to be making choices over and over and over and over and over and over and over in this game, which is kind of the appeal.
Yeah, the replayability is through the roof. Like I said, I grew up playing these games time and time again and never, ever hit a wall where I was like, I've done the game. Because you just, like you're saying, even if you have a similar team as your last playthrough, heroes can use swords and axes. So maybe you want to specialize. Wait, can they? In some games they can. In this one, I don't remember. But, okay, generals can use axes and lances. So maybe you got S on Gilliam in your first playthrough on lances. You could do it with axes this time, and then he's kind of a different unit. Like, because he's going to be opposing, using the weapon triangle, lance characters with that axe. So you throw him at different fronts to be a meat shield for those enemies. Because that weapon triangle really is the core system within the combat. And if you don't respect it, if you one time you don't respect the weapon triangle, you'll pay for it probably, because it vastly affects hit rate and crit rate, and damage. So it's very important. But yes, the depth is crazy, and this one too with the branching thing is crazy. Like when that came out, I was like, ooh, I don't know if I like this, because I was used to just mercenaries evolve, for the Pokemon fans, into heroes. You can't choose to make them something else, so a berserker, but it's great. It's good.
Class evolutions aren't the only new thing to this Fire Emblem game. It got a lot of flack for just being another Fire Emblem game, but there were some other unique features. I believe the whole support conversation and then subsequent bonuses shows up in this game for the first time, which I found kind of novel. That's not the first time. No. Okay. Well, regardless, that's a novel mechanic to these Fire Emblem games, if nothing else. And I found it fascinating because it kind of blurred the lines between story and fighting, and gave you some tangible reasons to kind of lean into some of those story beats, and then some more reasons to pick or not pick units and to tactically place them close to each other or spread them out. Like, there are a ton of little interactions like that again, make this very, very complex.
I don't love how they went about implementing it, but I do like that it is an added component to this game. I love characters and story, right, when I come to video games, and tactical games like this don't always have to have a lot of that, right? Like when you're doing...
Rarely do.
Yeah, they really rarely do. Fire Emblem is known for some of its more robust, in-depth story, and so I was hungry for any kind of moment where I could get a little bit more story. They give you a lot in between chapters, but you don't get a lot of like character building outside of some of the core main characters. You get that, however, through these support conversations. Yeah. So I love that. Don't love the implementation in that you have to have them by each other so often. I think that is a little bit like tough to do, especially when you're trying to
it's definitely
defeat and win, win a battle. And but it was always nice when you got them close. So your enemy or your team is kind of like the blue team, and the enemies are kind of the red team. Often when you get to a new map, there will be a few green characters, and the story before will point out who they are and why they are there. Yeah. And you can get them on your team if you talk to them with the right person also. And again, story building. And so like you often will send, there's one early on where you had to send this new girl that you had to go talk to either her brother or friend. I couldn't really put two and two together, Colm and whoever else the girl is. And if you make that conversation, then his green character sprite will turn blue and will then be a part of your team, and you can kind of control him. So I love the story element of these things. Yeah. Again, the implementation isn't my favorite. Yeah. But I love the story building out.
The implementation's always been... I agree. It's hard, for sure. So what I would end up doing, and what a lot of people would, just for the story, it tanks your rating on your battle. But who cares? You
Just stay there forever.
You have the boss left. That's it, and you just
Yeah.
stay there forever. And it does build over time, very slowly if you're not fighting. But you'll get your conversation to S that way. And I'm with you. I love that it's in there. And for me, it's actually a really huge part of my enjoyment of these games. Because like you said, strategy games don't care about this. They don't care about story and stuff. And yes, you get story in between chapters. Pretty surface level, though. But some of these there are a lot of them. Because each character has multiple support conversations that they can have. And you can get some of them to S all the way. You do it multiple times. And some of the stories are like tragic and like really, really good, and will build my love for specific characters, which we need to get into. There's so many characters, but like that will like give me my favorite character list because of their backstory that I end up learning about, which I love.
You guys say there's a little bit of story here, or that there is story here. I think it's important to point out that there is a lot of story here. These are long, drawn-out fights. These tactics encounters don't happen quickly. That's not a problem. It's just like a reality of the genre, is that each one is kind of its own like little mini game. You could almost sit down and play a fight as a session and walk away from the game and come back to another one and let it be chapters, and each one's going to feel fulfilling because they're long. With as long as they are, you probably spend more time reading text in this game than you do fighting.
Maybe. I mean, it's a lot of reading.
I spent a lot of time fighting.
That might be a little bit of hyperbole. I'm just trying to point out
You're right.
They very much lean into trying to... They're world building here.
Yeah.
Like, it's a story, but it's not a character story. They're trying to give you an empire scope of what's going on.
Yeah.
Which not every genre lends itself to, and this one does. So it's a fine goal, but it does mean you have a wide story with a lot of characters, and that it's going to take up a lot of time. That's not necessarily a negative, but it's just a reality of the kind of game that it is.
A lot of hours you'll put into this, yes. A lot.
Yeah, it's
And
just a long game.
We've already established on the podcast that more people need to get off TikTok and get into books, start reading more.
I don't think
needs
that.
to. You read enough?
Yes.
There is tons of reading. I'm incredibly used to that with games like Final Fantasy and any other game. I never thought that it went on the other end of, you know what, it is towing the line of being too much. And because, this is what I'll say, world building is good, but I don't like world building at the expense of character building, and because I like the more like focused like development of those, which you get in the support conversations, but are easy to miss. And so mainly in between, you're getting this world building, and unfortunately, your lords, the twins, are somewhat more of the two-dimensional characters of the whole thing.
Series.
Of the series?
Lords are with a couple exceptions.
More vanilla?
Lords get memed on a lot for being those types of characters,
Got you.
unfortunately. But yeah, Erica's a lot of people's favorite. A lot of people like Erica. She's sweet, but I mean, you're right. It's two-dimensional.
But no one likes her as much as Seth. So let's talk about some of these support characters, these other characters like Seth, who is the strongest in the whole franchise?
Well, okay, each game has a Seth. In Fire Emblem 7, he's called Marcus. In Fire Emblem 6, it's Marcus. It's just the younger one. And I forget what the community calls them, but it's a unit that's a pre-promoted unit.
Probably Daddy.
They call him Daddy, but your units usually are given to you at the beginning of the game, unpromoted. So the first stage of that character, he's already a paladin. So you didn't get him as a cavalier. He's a paladin, and he is strong. He's
strong.
Fast. He's one of the faster of those types of units, and he just solos the game. Literally, if you want that to be the case, he will solo the game. And he's the best. And so a lot of vets frown on using these characters because it's like easy mode. I love Seth. Seth is the man and was definitely on my team. I used a I use this website that will randomize your team. It'll because for me, I've
That's
played
fun.
every character, and so I was like, I don't know who I want to use. So you tell it how many characters do you want to use? 12, I think, is the typical number. And it was like, who do you want to make sure is in there? And I was like, Seth. So do y'all want to hear my team?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Eric-
People that haven't played are not going to have any
Eric-
kind of connection.
Erica, Ephraim, obviously, Seth, Dolza, Noel, Gilliam, Arthur, Tana, Ross, Duessel, Ewan, and Larachelle. So when it gave me that, I was like, I love all these characters, so I went with it.
I don't like Gilliam. Way too slow.
Oh,
He's
generals
great.
are slow, but dude, they're
He can move
freaking
like 3
walls, dude.
slots.
You can throw
Yeah.
okay, but when you
he's a
promote them to
meat
general,
shield.
yes, you put him, you throw him literally against anything, and he's like Giga Chad, just takes 1 damage.
I didn't use a website random generator of my
Yeah.
characters, but I can't quote to you my entire team, the names of them, but I did, of course, like Seth. I tried not to use him too often because I wanted to level up, get the experience to some of my other team members, right?
Which is smart and what you must
That's
do.
that's the catch is you want to be using the people you want to be stronger, which is hard because then there's this whole do I fight optimally? Do I wait and let somebody kill this boss and get the big experience for being the one to do that?
Early
And
game's
so-
punishing in that regard. Very
Yeah.
punishing.
And so I loved Franz.
Yep.
He's so strong, and you have him so early, Nolan. I don't know
He's
what
just-
that face is all about.
I
He's
just
a
don't
baby
like the
Seth.
character.
He's
That's
great.
it.
I also love
Punchable
Ross because he's the first character that you get that can level up multiple times and go different directions.
He is a
journeyman.
demoted unit. Yeah, he has
Yeah.
2 promotions that he gets, and because
He's
of that,
strong.
if you do it right, he gets
Right.
freaking so good. I love Ross.
Right. Love him. And I'll say this. I don't love her for attack, but I love her for mobility. Vanessa on the Pegasus. She's an early unit that can move incredibly far and incredibly fast. And so I would use her for transportation all the time. It
You
was
know why
so
I don't
nice.
use her? I don't like her
No.
haircut. I don't like her hair. It's green, short.
By the way,
I love-
everybody in this game
love
has colored
Tucker.
hair. Only if
Yes.
you're you can know who's going to be on your team or an important character because they have
Yes.
colorful hair and big eyes. Then all the normies in the villages, they have small eyes and
Ugly.
just brown hair.
Yeah,
yeah.
anime
not-
chess.
Yes,
Yeah, you're
anime
right.
chess.
The anime part is real obvious sometimes.
Aged.
We've said it before, and we'll say it again. Handheld holds up.
Handheld holds
up.
up.
That's very true. Oh, well, have we said that just straight across the board? Because I don't think
always
Game Boy
GBA
holds
related.
up really well.
It's
I think
always
it's
GBA
always
related.
GBA. I think GBA is impervious.
GBA is
There's
magic.
something I've said it before. I'm just going to increasingly say this, but I think anything on GBA. If a GBA game comes across our podcast, I'm going to give it New Game Plus status, and I'll do it every time because there's nothing wrong with it.
Okay, wait.
Wow.
But
Bold
there
statement.
is something here about that because, one, right now I couldn't name you a ton that are duds, right? But 2, the DS had so many duds, and we talked about that because they just made every game. Just everyone was allowed to make a game that was like a touch game on Nintendo DS. And because of that, you have a lot of bloat. GBA, you kind of didn't. It was a focused console with focused dev teams and companies making games that are really playable, and they look and they sound fantastic. And so far, I think we're, however many we've played, 10 for 10 or however many it was. We haven't hit one that Dustin specifically, because I know you're looking every time, has been like,
I do still think there's even a broader reality of the types of games that get put onto a handheld cartridge tend to be more future-proof than other kinds of games. They don't age as poorly.
why?
Obviously, there's some duds. I don't know. I just feel like it. The simplicity of the graphics, the amount of clarity they have to do with the HUD and the gameplay and keeping things simple but still engaging.
And they didn't have to try to do 3D. That's a big one.
Right. It
That's
was
a-
always
That's a big
just
thing.
a pick it up and play it, and so we don't tend to fight with. There's DS exceptions, but with as many like hardware issues, there's. I just get hyped for portable games for a lot of reasons, but especially the GBA.
Yeah, I think you're being too broad with portable games because I think you've got some on either end of the spectrum, either end of the GBA, sorry, like before and after, or during even, that aged poorly. Anytime I think about Game Boy, straight up Game Boy games, I think that it's an uphill climb to play today because of graphics and because of too simplistic, because of no color, because of A and B only, those kinds of things. But when you come to the GBA, it was so far in the future of that time that 3D was happening, but they weren't doing it. And so they had the best of like technical progress, but they were being able to funnel all of that into a handheld. And man, almost everyone that we play sounds good, looks good, plays good. And I've just thoroughly impressed over and over again, particularly with this game. The sprite artwork is so good. The character
Super
portraits
good.
are phenomenal. The animations are spectacular.
I was a little worried at first because of the space on the screen when you got these characters and they came up in the first couple of fights.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is going to feel real samey, or like, how are they going to communicate this? And then one of the early on fights, you have one of your horsemen or your paladin or somebody do a like charge animation, and he's just in place, but his horse starts moving and he runs in and does this amazing like jab. And I was like, that was awesome. He didn't even move, but it communicated it so well. And yes, they do a great job with the visuals and with the space they have. It's limited, but the HUD is clean, and you get information for days that you need to know here, but it communicates it well. Came to great stuff.
I'm disappointed that both of you didn't get to see some of the later game crit animations because they get increasingly more hype. And
I love that.
Joshua, which you may have gotten, is a Myrmidon. I've never known how to pronounce his class. But if you promote him to an assassin, a swordmaster, the crit for the swordmaster is one of my favorite of all time on the GBA because they do this like they get in this stance and then ghosts of them like fly off on the back of them like you don't know which one's coming at you, and they how on a little screen with pixel art can be so epic and hype. Yeah, I mean it looks like just visual. It's amazing. And Dustin, to answer your question about the hair color, it's not a question, but you pointed it out. They did that so that on the battle screen, your character has different color hair than the last one if they're the same class.
Yeah, they stand out.
So it's so good.
I will say that where the artwork shines, I thought the soundtrack was good, but I can only imagine that there are better OSTs in the series.
I have more. I have a favorite, of course, and yes, there are better, but it's still really good.
I agreed. It was one that was like really good mood setting for the game, but nothing that had a hook or a melody or that was going to make me want to like remember it or come back to it.
Went too far. You both went too far.
No, you both?
Yeah, you both
you
went
agreed
too far.
With me and then
you crossed the line. I won't allow that.
You
to
listen
stand.
to this OST like on its own merits.
I
for
would.
The music.
I don't listen to OSTs often, but of course I would. Look, when you get a new character, when you talk to one of those green units, and that cues up the "Ride with Me" song, come on, it's not as good as Sevens.
With me, Nelly.
But it's so good, and y'all are tripping.
No, I'm saying that it is good, but
It's great.
I'm somewhere in the middle because I think it's good, but there aren't many memorable tracks on the OST. I think there are probably 2 or 3 that are standouts, but other than that, the rest is good. Completely works for the game, but not going to make a YouTube playlist that we're never going to do again.
Completely agree. B+.
No, the victory
complaints.
theme. I can name so many. The victory theme when you have one enemy left. Dun, 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 dun.
Sorry, I think you're thinking dun 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 dun
Yeah,
dun
you
dun
just
dun.
sang
that was
Final
trash.
Fantasy.
That was trash.
Whoa.
My rump.
It's trash
Okay.
right now.
Sound effects also generally on point, though a little heavy-handed. And let me tell you, I got so sick of the text scrolling sound effect. There's a lot of it.
No,
You
I
need
think
it.
That's
You
lame.
need it because it'd feel really hollow without it, but they could have toned it back a little bit. I got way over it.
Dude, I'm gonna end you.
Cool.
Let's move
So
on from the
many
sound and the
threats
audio.
on this. There are, Nolan, out of the 17 core entries and 5 spin-offs in the Fire Emblem franchise, how many of them have you played?
Let me count. So
No, that will take too long.
No, I
Just
Guesstimate.
okay.
No, you're counting.
No, 12. He's
I
played,
played
12.
11 of them.
Close, Kenny.
See, you could have just
wow.
guesstimated.
I have
That's
missed
a
a
lot.
lot of the Japanese NES ones. A lot of them.
Now,
But-
a Fire Emblem game just recently came out, correct?
Yeah, Engage, and I haven't played it, but I've heard from 2 trusted sources about Fire Emblem that it's really good, and I'm stupid for not playing it yet.
You played and beat 3 Houses, which was the
Yeah.
most recent one before this most
Yep.
recent one.
All 3 storylines on hard, yes.
Okay, so are you going to play this one?
Yeah, of course, I will. I'm about to get back into a Switch era because we've got Zelda coming out, and this one's already out, so I'm going to play it for sure.
All right, good. I can't wait for you to stream it or make a Let's Play.
Oh, Let's Plays are dead. I'll stream it.
Oh, interesting.
Doesn't mean you can't make one anyways.
And not for Gen
does.
Z. They like to create relationships and community, and they like to follow along, and they watch Twitch more than us.
Fine, I'll create relationships with younger people on the internet.
They can play chess with me.
Okay. So if you want a copy for your Game Boy Advance, you're going to be spending a pretty penny. It is $69 used
Nice.
or loose, and it is $320 new.
I own this game.
Wow.
You want $69?
No, I'm keeping it forever. That's nothing to me.
Rich boy.
Okay, baller.
If it was 70, maybe.
Final thoughts.
At the end of each and every one of our episodes, we determine whether or not the game gets our vote for New Game Plus status, which is our general thumbs up or thumbs down. It does require 2/3 of the vote to swing one way or the other. Our resident Fire Emblem fanboy will begin by just telling us how much he loves this game.
Yeah. I think that this game is one of the best on the console because you have so much game here in this tiny little cartridge. I've talked about the replayability, but even before that begins, just playing through the story once, it's a long game, which is in not a negative way. It's just you can take it in pieces. You can do it chapter by chapter, and if you get stumped or get bored, you can suspend the chapter mid-chapter and come back to it later. There's just so much to enjoy about the game, and we've talked about all of it, so I'm not going to keep going. But with the amount of replayability, the truly rich strategy component of this game, which I can't say about a lot of other games that claim to be strategy games, with the amount of player decision and control that you have, music story, it just simply doesn't get much better on the GBA for me. And I think it's I would easily recommend this one as your first Fire Emblem if you haven't played the series before. I think it's accessible. It's got a good challenge if you play on hard mode like I did. Like, it's really good. It's really good.
That's one yes. Kenny, what do you say?
There are folks who will struggle with this genre. I think we have to acknowledge that because it's a little bit of a slog. Like, if this is you sitting down to read a book, it's Moby Dick or Charles Dickens. Like, you're going to have to work your way through it. It's slow and yeah, okay, fine. If you're sitting down and watching a TV series, it's one that's already been out for 10 seasons and you're not going to be able to binge it in a weekend. It's a long game with a lot that you have to do and just a breadth that's going to be overwhelming for some people. But the quality is there. Your characters, even if there are too many, and there are too many, are distinct and mostly interesting. I think the width of the cast makes your story a little shallower, and your story kind of suffers for it, but it does help you build this sort of world scale sense of kind of history unfolding that's actually a kind of neat way of like understanding a story. So all of that to say, if the game type isn't a problem for you, this is a great taste of what this genre can do well. It's a lot, but it's done well. I'm gonna give it NGP, not as overwhelmingly as some of you because of all of that caveat, but for this main reason. If you like the genre anyways, you'll love this game. And if you don't like the genre, this might as well be the game you choose to find that out, because it's a really good game. I don't think it's for everybody, but it's a good version of that. So yeah, NGP.
I agree with a lot of what Kenny said, that I don't think the genre is for everybody, and it's not asking a lot from you, but it is asking for more than what a lot of people would maybe be willing to play. I know my brother played some this week, and he said, I just don't think it's for me. I got through the introduction, and it's just slow. It's a slower paced kind of thing, like chess, maybe. You know, and I know you're moving fast when you're playing bullet chess or whatever you are, Kenny, but it's just a slower, like, think through things, which I like. And that there is story and characters just brings that up the ladder for me a little bit more. I do think that having such a vast cast of characters diminishes the depth of characterization and story that you're able to get through, but still, I think this is a brilliant, beautiful game. And from my Fire Emblem experience, which is admittedly tiny, this is a good, I agree with Nolan, this is a good entry, and Kenny, this is a good entry for you, whether or not, if you haven't played the series yet. Play Sacred Stones. I think it's definitely worth playing today. The GBA is Lord overall, and I give this game my vote for New Game Plus status, which means
Yay.
Fire Emblem The Sacred Stones is unanimously New Game Plus certified.
As it should be.
But what did you think? We had 50% say yes, it's worth playing on our YouTube poll, and I think
Nice.
a record-making 1% said no.
That's
Wow.
Yeah, that's definitely the lowest.
That's
'cause
so
we would have
low.
reacted
I don't
to
think
that.
we've had one on a Mario title. Like,
One
I think
hater
one.
out there. Just
1% said no, and 49% have never played it before.
Wow, I
I'm
love those
surprised
stats.
at that
That's
ratio.
That's a good ratio. I'm happy with that.
The low hate doesn't surprise me, but the amount of people who've played it versus haven't does. I figured it would be,
True.
I don't know,
Yeah.
30-70 almost.
I feel that.
There's so many Fire Emblem games, so if they play Fire Emblem, it's like, which of the 20 million are they going to play? And
Right.
GBA handheld, I think that also
Yes.
brings that percentage up.
Yeah.
We had many from our community play, some for the 100th time, some for the first time, write in their commentary. Read a few of those now. Shane said, Fire Emblem is a series I've enjoyed well enough generally, and Sacred Stones is no exception of that. Its interesting tactics gameplay usually keeps me trying to get a battle right. The later entries in the series certainly pull me in, though the reason for that seems to have began here, at least in America, the support system. I like to joke, why would I play a tactics game without a dating sim stapled on? Sometimes to other tactics games, and well, sometimes it is a joke. I do find the character interactions and greater world building it provides a central part of Fire Emblem. This system is in its infancy in this game, requiring frankly ridiculous investment to progress, making it rank a bit lower for me since I didn't get to see much of those interactions. Overall, though, the game is still the same enjoyable main gameplay that I'd happily recommend to anybody looking to try the series. NGP for me.
Yeah, I think that a lot of that goes back to the length of the game I was talking about. It's a big game.
Nolan, in Three Houses, you legitimately have an option to pet people?
Yeah, you do. I disagree with that game in many ways. I don't love that game.
What do the developers mean by that?
Well, you say you want to do it, and then like they like it little hearts. It's really weird fan service to a specific amount of people that love waifus that want to pet them. It's really creepy. And I don't love that game. Because
Yeah.
it's Three Houses is a weird entry in this series. It really is.
Logan said, Fire Emblem is a series I've always wanted to get into, but thus far, it has never quite captured me. Typically, I bounce off the games pretty early due to either slow narrative start or being immediately difficult or loaded down with decisions early, but something about this one really struck a perfect balance for me. Within the first couple of chapters, I immediately enjoyed the cast of characters and wanted to see where the story would take me, and the game has enough little touches to be quite friendly to newcomers, like the map that allows you to freely visit previous shops so you never need to worry about ending up stuck. Unprepared. I'm really glad I was prompted to give this game a chance this week, and I'm very much looking forward to making this the first Fire Emblem game that I beat.
That is a big thing that we didn't talk about, was that map that they give you and allow you to move it.
Overworld.
That was not in the previous games, and it does add and some ease to the difficulty a little bit.
Yeah, nice quality of life features.
Garlisle, who, by the way, had his birthday just yesterday. Happy birthday, Garlisle.
Happy birthday.
Said, Seth Emblem, Sacred Seths, is a game in which one paladin stomps an entire army and maybe some other characters help from time to time.
I love it. Yeah.
Jokes aside, I do have fondness for Sacred Stones. I played it so much as a kid, I filled out the entire support log, so revisiting this was a birthday treat. And while I do still love most of its colorful cast, what stood out to me... Colorful? What stood out to me most was the mediocre stage design, especially right after the incredible FE Engage. Choke points, singular fronts, empty space, passive enemies, frequently trivial objectives. These promote a much safer and methodical play that doesn't get the blood pumping. None of this stops the game from being fun, and I did enjoy revisiting it, but it's definitely not the masterpiece I thought upon its release. Just really good.
Okay, yes. I think that Sacred Stones, the best... map design is later in the game. There are genuinely a couple chapters of this game that are like my favorite in the whole series, but early game and a lot of the game, he's right. It's a little straightforward and lackluster. There are other games in the series that do this better, but I have to agree the early game's a bit forced.
I think, however, coming at it from someone that doesn't have much experience with the series, that it's slow and it gradually teches you. So I like it at first. Like the choke points are important because it teaches you some of these things. So I like it, but I do remember. So I didn't fully clarify, but like Nolan introduced me to this game years ago, and I played it from start to finish, and so I was able to revisit it this week. But I remember back then there were some stages that would take me hours because of how big the stage is, because of how many enemies you're facing, how many units you're controlling.
Reinforcements keep showing up.
Yeah, it's definitely intense. Finally, Cecil said, "Cards on the table. Fire Emblem is one of my favorite franchises of all time, if not top of my list. So take whatever comments I give with a grain of salt."
Okay.
The GBA trio of entries in the series had a sense of style and presentation that was technically simple, but chock-a-block with personality and character. The combat animations are simply iconic, and the plots and characters just got better and better with each iteration. Sacred Stone has an economy-sized cast relative to this franchise, for this franchise, and the game makes the most of them, where pretty much every support is a banger and every character is worth following up with. Of course, there are some quality of life features that are missing from this game, if only because they started showing up in later titles. You don't know how valuable, if not vital, toggleable enemy range display is until it's gone.
Yes,
and grinding the supports themselves is still brutal. Sacred Stones wasn't the most popular of the FE games when it came out, and while reception may have overcorrected a touch recently, it still stands out as top tier among the classic era games and definitely deserves NGP status.
I spent a good amount of time cycling through every button and combination of buttons to try and toggle the enemy range. And I was like, I think it's in this game. Is it not? And it's not. It's really important, though.
Thank you for all of you sending in your thoughts on the Retro Game of the Week. You can do that each and every week. Email ngppodcast@gmail.com or drop into our commentary channel on Discord. Leave your thoughts there. We'd love to try at least and include your thoughts as a part of our episode next week. For now, we're setting aside the Sacred Stones, and we are randomly selecting, but not from our Retro Master list, because it is time for a Patreon poll.
Yes.
We have games in here such as...
Oh, yeah, I'm excited. Hold on.
Alundra, submitted by Ellis.
Okay.
Final Fantasy 12, submitted by X Childs.
What?
Mario 64, submitted by George.
Oh.
Mother 3, submitted by Retro Man. And Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest, submitted by Mac Morph. In fact, I believe, man, I really need to know this. I believe it was Shane. Let me make sure. Yes, it was Shane, who actually gathered the stats and created different charts for me, including a pie chart.
I love it.
That gives us information on what people submitted. We have the most in PS2. 17.8% of submissions were in PS2. Okay. While, let's see, what was next? That would be GameCube. 15.1% of submissions.
Oh, wild card. I did not expect that.
And then PC at 13.7%.
I hope.
This is crazy to me. The most entries at 9 are for Pikmin.
Oh, they came together on that one.
Okay.
Well, GameCube title.
A few came together. 9 is not much comparatively speaking here.
I've never played
We've got 4 entries for games like Brave Fencer Musashi and Star Wars Rogue Squadron and Final Fantasy 12 and Super Mario 64. All of those have 4 entries.
Wow. Okay.
We've got 3 entries for Zelda the Minish Cap, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game of the movie.
Oh, no. Do y'all have... Wait, which one do y'all hope it is? I hope it's Super Mario 64.
Wow, that would be crazy. I secretly want it to be Brave Fencer Musashi because the OST is so great, and it's a JRPG, I think. So, like, we haven't had one in a while.
It looks really good, yeah.
All right, there's a lot of games in here. Thank you for all of your submissions. Hopefully yours gets selected. And one of yours will. Randomizing now. The randomizer giveth.
Oh, no.
And the randomizer taketh.
Wait, so we're going to unplay a game this week? What does that even mean?
Again, we had games in here like Final Fantasy 12 and Super
Mario
Mario 64 and Metal Gear Solid 3 and some Castlevania games. And the game that was selected is a 1994 game for the Super Nintendo.
Okay.
It is a tournament-based fishing video game.
Okay.
Submitted by Super Garbage Day. For the next 7 days, we're playing a game that I'm pretty confident that I played as a rental called Basson's Black Bass with Hank Parker.
Don't count.
Don't sleep,
dude.
Don't sleep on fishing games.
Fishing games
some of those
are fun.
Yeah, some of those off-genre games, golf games in an arcade, fishing games, trucking sims, farming simulators. There's some weird games out there that are actually like niche but good.
Say
and
the
I'm
name again.
Curious if this is one.
It's Basson's Black Bass with Hank Parker. I'm assuming Hank is a professional fisher. Some of you might know that better than I. But grab a copy of Basson's Black Bass with Hank Parker that was published by Hop B and developed by Starfish. Thank you, Super Garbage Day, for submitting that game, as well as all of you for submitting your games that didn't get selected. Find a copy of this game. I'm not going to say the title again. Play it along with us this week.
Bassin' Bass. Join our Discord server if you would. Go to discord.gg/newgameplus, please. Not please at the end, just comma, please. Don't put the comma.
There are a lot of podcasts in the ocean, and when you've gone fishing, you've caught us. The folks that have reeled us in by just supporting us on patreon.com include our producers, Adam, Alex, Marley, and Antonin, Ben, Big Dude, Brunk, Ellis, Fishy, Francesca, Gimbin, J. Robert, Jared, Joey, Jordan, Justin, Clid, Nicknack, Corey, Lawai, Levi, Maximum, Pedro, Sage, and Shauna, Subsonic Demon, Tazelhoff, Thomas, Unbedavable, and Zion. Thank you to our director-level supporters, Brojim, Daniel, DH Bowser, Garlisle, and Super Hypered. And big welcome to the newest fish in our pond. David, thank you for joining us as a patron.
Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
You can follow us on our social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, and YouTube. All of those links are in the show notes. Listen directly on any podcast provider of your choice. Make sure you subscribe so that you are the first to get new NGP episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a kind rating and review. Our video episode was edited by our friend Dylan. Our audio episode was edited and produced by our friend Dan Willett. Join us next week as we play Bassin's Black Bass with Hank Parker. I'm so glad that we're all going to the lake together, and Kenny's going to demonstrate fishing for us in the first play. Until then, I'm still Ephraim.
I'm gone fishing.
I'm Noel with a K.
And this has been New Game Plus.